Julie here with Ceres, Dallas Moon, Jupiter, our Mercury day. Mercury is 22 in Jupiter, 18 degrees. Cancer and the Moon is 11 degrees. Libra. So we got all the toxic degrees on board. And I'm going to begin with Rahu reversal um, for basically the Rahus in Magha Nakshatra. Now, I have spoken about this topic from a particular angle, but I want to talk about Rahu Ketu reversals, and particularly Rahu Ketu reversals for the current transit, which is Rahu in Magha Nakshatra, in terms of going where everybody's leaving. So if I think about when I had my Rahu Ketu reversals, um, that would be basically around age 9 and around um, later that would be think about 18 years from age 9, that would be around my Saturn return. And so the going where everyone is leaving um, can also be seen as materializing to dematerialize, um, or a back to the future type of phase, which is eventually the name of my thesis that I would write would be Back to the Future, but my thesis proposal. And when we talk about the current Rahu Ketu in Magha Nakshatra, we can see people are going, it's kind of like going to Epstein Island when everybody's leaving. And that kind of like can actually be material, can actually be somebody materializing Magha when when everybody's dematerializing. So that that it can express itself as wealth consolidating with someone who is later immediately being discovered as an Epstein list affiliated, or becoming Epstein list affiliated when everybody's leaving, or not really knowing that the dossiers are going to actually dossier, and or not getting the heads up, which can very well be Rahu, because Rahu can be all about not getting the heads up. Rahu is the person that's a newcomer. Or Rahu could be getting the heads up, but it would have to discern whether it's the real heads up or the fake heads up. And so that could be, for example, with Magha, it can definitely materialize as um, expanding into or merger with particularly with Virgo. It can still be the mergers and acquisitions because there's such a trade facet to the Mercury ruled Magha, whereas the Leo one would more be like going to the Epstein Island. So now, because they are all Magha, they can literally be having to go to the Epstein Island to wealth consolidate as mergers and acquisitions of, I don't know, media company or trade company, and there are rites of passage that one has to do just when everybody's leaving, just when everybody's getting the heads up that those are the extortion cult rites of passage, so to speak, um, and that can materialize as materializing to dematerialize, or rushing to be included in the picture with okay, those people that will later be exposed for doing so and so and so and so. uh, and another way in which it can manifest is um, a very simple form of passing the torch, like a regal passing the torch. And here it probably is a mixture of all of these, where somebody is set to, particularly now, if it is in the Pisces Virgo, they are dematerializing at this moment. They are dematerializing. I'm sorry. They are set to materialize the Fomalhaut facet. But if they have a Ketu there, they are dematerializing, or they're materializing the dematerialization of something to do with where they came from. And that can be with Jupiter, it can be particularly now, they are materializing to dematerialize toxic beliefs. It can be, for example, following a certain guru teachings. I remember I was listening to one of the spiritual gurus when I was channeling that will later be associated with, or whose teachings could be, um, we, if we sort the wheat from the chaff, the teachings could be enabling the ritual abuse of salvation rituals, coming from the point that this person was probably crucified, very literally so. Um, and then having to sort the wheat from the chaff when we talk about, let's say, the Epstein dossiers, and before we apply the advice of a person that was crucified, we want to ask what were the toxic beliefs around that crucifixion, and shouldn't we tend to change these toxic beliefs rather than apply the advice for a person who is on the cross? So there's a lot going with. I'm going to address the Pisces Virgo, and then I'm going to address the Aquarius Leo. There's a lot going where we are materializing with particular this Jupiter, with this 18-degree Jupiter, it's about to go into the 19-degree. We are materializing beliefs that whether they are toxic or not, we are materializing towards the more philosophical part of Jupiter, which means if it's a sorry, if it's a faraway journey, we might be making plans. We might be actually having to go far away, but then that journey ended up not going, and then being a philosophical journey more than a material journey. So for some people, it may be a materialization of a certain shamanic or astral journey, um, and um, and the fact that Rahu, the transit in Rahu, is where one's Ketu is, could literally be materializing the non-attachment in regarding to a certain philosophy, teaching, a place of seclusion, and they could even materialize being somewhat secluded in their beliefs, or physically. Maybe they have to go somewhere, and they are materializing non-attachment from, if it's, let's say, a woman, it can be she has to go on a journey following her research, and then she can't take her husband with her. So that can be something, because Jupiter is the husband. Or somebody has to go, somebody actually has to venture out at this, uh, at sea, and then they are um, they are faced with having to have a certain non-attachment, even regarding their very survival. And this is also where it's kind of like a materialization of Ketu-like experiences. And Ketu-like experiences are not of a material form, so it can be incredibly destabilizing, overwhelming, and desensitizing. Um, and where the spirit of the time is going, they were just they were their soul is venturing out, for the spirit of the time is going or forcing them back into a place where they thought, hey, I'm already done with that. I came from there, why do I go there again? For some people, if it's fourth house, let's say Sagittarius ascendant, it can be having to go back home. um, Having to go back home. For example, when the Ketu Rahu were on Aries and Libra, Then I have the ruler of my fourth house, and indeed I had to go back to home. And when it was Rahu return, it was actually going back to the motherland as Netherlands, which was beyond surprising to me. Um, Not that it should be, but it was, particularly of the whereabouts. But here is um, the topic here is that somebody could be going to their homeland, going to their roots, going where they came from, and but not to stay there. It can be traveling to by the way, I think this can actually favor the type of traveling to meet the ancestral root, or traveling to where the ancestry lived, um, or learning about the roots of one's origins or the philosophical traditions that they came from, um, and dematerializing certain facets even of these teachings. For example, I think one of my Rahu Ketu reversals were when I was learning that Einstein initiated the call. I don't remember what president it was, to basically initiate Los Alamos, where probably my first Rahu Ketu reversal was me learning about Einstein, believing that his invention of basically the physics advancement that led to the atomic bomb was his invention being used malevolently. Well, where later I would learn that he initiated the call, and now I actually learn about the occult, where it's kind of like squaring my Rahu Ketu, where I understand why would people manifest the dropping of an A bomb and join the teams of, particularly as women, of like a Los Alamos team, um, while I'm tending to denuclearification. So, so this is where we could be going back to the roots to dematerialize or to revise certain conceptions, certain wisdoms that we have from the belief, and from the philosophical traditions or teachings we came from. Pisces can also be dream state, so it can literally be astral journeying and running into information that we haven't known before. Now, Rahu, or Ketu transiting Rahu, on the Virgoian aspect, can literally be a refining crisis, where it's kind of like, well, before one goes Magha, they need to dematerialize the toxic ways of Magha. They need to dematerialize the, let the weight of the throne not be the children that were raped to get to the throne. Now, in case they already are, it's also about materializing to dematerialize. Now, in the worst case scenario, it can be receiving the throne to be dethroned, but it can actually be stopping or going through the rite of passage to abolish that particular rite of passage. And this would be one of the best significations if it already happened. That kind of like, hey, if somebody was already, I don't know, raping child to cameras or sacrificing children or whatever, from that point of view, the utmost best outcome would be to abolish this practice altogether. Think about the mother that circumcised her son, deciding that she will no longer support circumcision, and has another son and doesn't circumcise her son, starting a trend of mothers not circumcising their son in the kingdom. So that's the type of opportunities that the conjoining of Ketu to Rahu have with Magha Nakshatra. Um, and it can also be um, having to dematerialize profits from mergers and acquisitions that came in a way that negates, let's say, fair trade. And when I think about a lot of the things that happen with various media companies and social media companies had to do with just those things. And then the series of litigations, uh, all the way to being held accountable for the human trafficking that took part on the platforms that caused, beyond the initial case, they were the cornerstone of future cases and future regulations over social media. Also, we want to think about this transit as the transit where they burned the open AI factories as a labor union, which leads me to the next topic, and that is the Beta Per Se Alcyon Square with Fomolav Denebalgiri on the one hand, and on the other hand with Regulus and Magha Nakshatra. Now, how does Beta Per Se square Magha is actually quite obvious. Beta Per Se was the maiden that was very sensual, and it was not believed that she was raped. And Magha can literally be occultistic rape. And so the square here is kind of obvious, where the materialization of Magha was at the expense of an occultistic rape and blame shifting. And that can be where Ketu Magha um, can be the use of a scandal to dethrone, while the people that were trafficked were also trafficked by the people who arranged this scandal from the extortion cult, and not just by, let's say, the public figure that is rightfully accused of rape. Um, Now with Alcyone, and Regulus, there is quite an interesting thing where any girl thing or woman thing that was of Alcyone had to be shape shifted into, by the aid of a man, shape shifted into a dove in the sky, or into something that cannot be raped because it is unattainable in its physical form. While the boy stories, or the dragon serpent stories, had incarnated and had to return to their original lover as a result of a fallout of the mother of the serpent, and consulting all the mothers trying to see what to do, or adopting the princess so that she's a part of the family anyway. Um, and if we think about Magha as the family being Epstein-like or Maxwell-like, then there is an issue that adopting into the family doesn't solve the rape issue. And then excluding from the family still subjects one to the same issue, where they would have to literally shape shift from the physical form into a form that cannot be raped. So this is a very, very tension type of square. It's the after Beta Per Se story. If Beta Per Se's rage turned everyone into stone, the Alcyone was literally escaping the physical materialization and shape shifting into, which can literally be the people that are asking for euthanasia because of these things. Um, having a natal Chiron there, I can attest that that definitely was a chapter where, until the wish to live exists, the actual physical incarnation of life um, is kind of like so terrifying, and at the same time, the wish to live is there. Um, Now, the square with Fomalhaut um, and Deneb Algedy is that Deneb Algedy defends the underdog, but here the actual physical materialization of existence had to be compromised to not be raped. So it's kind of like where Deneb Algedy failed to reach. And also, if Deneb Algedy defends the underdog, here Alcyone was actually the very desired, so much so that he had to shift its physical form because that desire was manifesting as rape rather than as actual willing encounter by both people. Now, of course, Deneb Algedy also protects from rape, but there's something about this. There's something about this square um, where the wealth redistribution cannot be of as cannot come in the form of having to be sexual or um, and with Fomalhaut is the psychic wisdom of the bottom of the ocean, whereas Alcyone had to be transmuted into an unattainable and inhuman shape, where Fomalhaut is uncovering the authentic shape or the essence of the soul, and yet with Alcyone, it's the danger of rape that required basically reincarnating the physical form. Now, with Rahu around this area, or Rahu Chiron, or they have to physically incarnate where they can't physically be. Um, so lots of tension and transformation in the sky. Right now, the moon is beginning to form a kite shape, or beginning to end its kite shape formation with the Neptune, Saturn, and Venus, Uranus, and Pluto. Venus is squaring the nodes, um, which gives us a particular Venusian challenge to the journey um, of and from Magha. And the way I see that is thinking about the women that had to go through the rite of passage to incarnate something really Magha-like, really Regalian, where where everybody's actually leaving Magha, and at the same notion, the women that had to literally shapeshift into an untouchable form in order to escape the consequences of maybe even the business strategy of the former or the surrounding of the former. Um, Particularly when we talk about mergers and acquisitions and conglomerates, or let's say if somebody joins a conglomerate that has a certain business strategy, and that business strategy is to torture people to almost death until they launch their own issue, and that can be definitely a Venus squaring the nodes, where something that was supposed to be happy, like a new project, is being launched at the expense of people having to go through months and even years of torture so that they wouldn't, God forbid, launch something. Um, and it also questions, if I think about the again the Alcyone square, it questions the outcome, because if the women had to be transmuted to a dove in the sky, then um, there's something along that journey, or along the materialization of Magha, that something was lost here that could be a pyrrhus wing, or even some people would even say the soul. Although I'm being very cautious with that, because when we're talking about venturing into a new territory, there are conglomerates, and people are not fully aware what would be the strategy of the people around the conglomerate. For example, let's say, I don't know, if I would sell my podcast to Netflix, let's say, I don't know what would be the strategy of the conglomerate, or if some other creators wouldn't be tortured to almost death, supposedly for the success of this merger and acquisition without my knowledge or consent. So those are things that I also take into account. Um, Now, of course, if somebody knew and consented, then they have committed an act of sacrificing something that they may regret later for sacrificing. Um, um, and um, Now let's talk about the Rahu Ketu reversal from Leo to Aquarius. And this is where we're going to be having Rahu venturing towards Deneb Algedy, opening another set of eclipses that are the Pluto Lilith eclipses in Aquarius. So we had Lilith Rahu eclipses, and even Lilith Chiron, I think, in Aries, in the Aries Libra. And now we're venturing towards the the Pluto Lilith eclipses, which are going to be the last venue before 2030, where Lilith would actually be with Ketu and Venus would be with Rahu. And this is kind of like the Sophia Mary Magdalene ray inclusion, while before that we have to deal with the refining crisis of Lilith and materialize the woman who stands in our power, the woman who will not be subjugated, so that our inclusion of the Venusian is not Eve's style, in the sense that it's not going to be an exile from heaven again. And this is requiring a lot, since Lilith was the woman before Eve. And the reason it didn't work so well between Lilith and Adam was that Lilith would not be subjugated. So if you think about, why did it not work with the ex? Um, she was not open in bed, but she's very sexual. Yeah, but to, um, you know, but she is aware of her own desires, and she's just kind of like not above, not below anyone. Exactly that, not below anyone. Oh, okay. Such an important conversation. We can't talk about sex, it's a sin. That's like eating an apple. What will happen then? the snake will be crawling instead of walking upright. That doesn't sound so good for humanity. You'd be surprised. How come? Well, if he doesn't want her not subjugated, isn't it better for him to be enslaved? Build a pyramid or something. And what was the gnosis with the pyramids? The 6-9, aligning the feminine and masculine, and thereby abolishing slavery. And so this is where um, we're gonna have the Lilith eclipses, and so Rao Deneb Algedi is kind of like the foreplay to the rejection game of Lilith not being subjugated, which means Adam has to face whatever his childhood trauma of being raped as a boy is, the secret societies. It's not in the Bible, but it has happened because that's the only thing that would create a man who cannot have a woman enjoying herself not as a subject but as an equal. Yeah, where was she not subjugated? It was heaven. It wasn't like she had to be in the kitchen. It was kind of like a food forest and like, well, don't eat apples. Okay. And Eve was punished with a childbirth as punishment, with the husband ruling her. Now, of course, if she's subjugated, the labor, conception, and it's going to be more difficult, but it's kind of like, well, there is thistles. Um, and that leads me to kind of a very on topic of topic, which is the cultures where there are those beliefs and structures that are actual practices and rituals that affect infants. It tends to breed polygamies where nobody is satisfied, trauma bonds and misplaced arousal, and of course, the women that are choosing to be child free. All stemming from trying to force the population to breed. Kind of like, well, bring back, look, create, like, why create a woman from the rib of the man rather than scrap that man and have a man that is okay with a woman that would not be subjugated? Well, anyway, Eve was doing the same thing as Lilith. She was like, then the snake is like, hey, that thing over there is really tasty. God said we shouldn't. Try it. God said, what will happen? Oh, she will actually desire her husband. Boom! Expelled from paradise, husband and wife having lovely sex that they both want, away from paradise, husband and wife, okay? Like, it's not, it's not even cheating. If you, basically, according to the biblical God, if you have an orgasm, you're expelled from paradise. And your lineage is a punishment. Yes. כן, בואי. קחי 2, תעשי גם לי.
אבל כוס. יש עוד כלים?
זהו. ממי, את התה את שמה אחרי, לי תשימי מים רותחים, לא ישר לשים את התה.
למה?
את שמה אותו כשזה חמים, לא חם, כדי לא לפגוע בוויטמינים. Yeah. The tea ritual. And it's not even matcha. So, Um, Now, the fact that Rahu is going then about Getty, the people that have Ketu there are going to be um, revisiting this point in their chart and basically letting go of either being in a position of the underdog or letting go of how they saw wealth redistribution. Now, Dana-Balgady is a Saturn sign, so a lot of people can have a tendency to see wealth redistribution as distributing pain rather than distributing wealth. Or they can tend to see wealth as pain, where wealth is actually the opposite. Now, Rahu, Leo can denote at the wealth that is the open-hearted, the doing it way big, and this is where people have to integrate the wisdom of Ketu into the materialization of Rahu. Now, Ketu Magha can actually be a remediative form. It can literally prevent them from going to excess with Rahu. So they have to be very attentive to what is happening when Ketu crosses Magha from Leo, because they could be dematerializing a heartache, particularly if they had like a first love that was of heartbreak or perceived rejection. This is where they could go and revisit their Ketu and see that, wait a second, their perceptions regarding the entire thing were clogging their heart unnecessarily. They could be revisiting, um, or they could have a certain issue where if they fall in love, they have to have non-attachment towards love that would actually facilitate, in the best of cases, materializing the Magha in an actual open-hearted form that doesn't play into the hands of extortion cults. Um, they could be, yeah, they could be the woman that is offered an opportunity to date a prince whose previous spousey divorced him in a meme. Okay, that can absolutely be with, um, particularly if it's people around their 40s or 42. They are, well, 42 right now are the Rahu Geminis. So, but yeah, 42 are the Rahu Geminis. But the people that are having this before their 40s, they want to take notes at what is happening right now and how it may facilitate an easier materialization of Rahu when they are in their 40s. For example, if I think about my Rahu return in eclipses that were during COVID and my materialization right now when those very people that spot COVID are being litigated and even held accountable, um, there are many things that can facilitate an easier embarking into this zone of my natal chart, or at least an awareness and understanding that prior to COVID, I wouldn't connect the dots all that much. Um, so now, this is where there can be a very violent association with Magha, because Regulus in its unrefined form or darker form can take the role of um, Mars here in a way that is not really, that is just aggressive over nothing. And this is something that Ketu comes to dematerialize, but the people for whom it is Rahu Ketu reversal, particularly, if people have, doesn't necessarily Rahu Ketu, if people have, let's say, Mars there, their strategy is being Ketu'd. And if it's being Ketu'd, they have to look at their strategy as, why is it being Ketu'd? Like, what here requires them to work with this Mars in its higher octave? Now, it's not easy. Mars in Leo is is a hot combination. Um, but how do they, let's say, they could create a point of Thales from well, not the end of Gemini, um, or, and definitely not zero Scorpio. It is a challenging one. Um, Maybe the end of Sag could give us clues. But this is also, Mula Nakshatra is very problematic and calls to transmute a lot, um, no less than the Magha. And the end of Aries is a point that could remediate the Chiron Aries, where um, being inclusive could be somewhat remediating, but they would still have to take rape away from all of their strategies if they don't want to run into beta per se rage with Chiron, which means that they would grow a company till it's traded and then it's confiscated by the state because they were swiping under the rug rape and trafficking in their business strategy, or built into the occult and esoteric practices as occult rape or occult torture to derive energy from suffering people as strategy. And again, if that was something that happened, then this can cause a lot of the backlashes that we saw, including the burning of places like the OpenAI, um, because of these things. Now, what I mean when I say because of these things, that's the type of thing that would make a business conglomerate susceptible. It's kind of like, hey, if they adopt this type of Mars strategy, they probably are activating it on the Marses that are not quite like them. And because Mars Leo acts by what they see, but here is where they square. The square with the beta per se point, which means they could be missing on the people that were raped and not believed, and that could turn them into stone and their business to confiscate it with Chiron. When Chiron reaches that point, they could be missing the perspective of the later Scorpio Marses that could be tending to the invisible, and unlike what the Leo sees, are not acting against them, or the friction is stemming from trying to eliminate rape from the esoteric, or from the strategy, or from the psychosexual issues that the native has because of rape related occultistic issues. And so the Leo placement sees and acts visibly. Now, if they use occult as violence, then this is where they could really be running into friction, because they might not see how their actions affect the non-physical realms, and at the same time they might think that it's an okay sacrifice, where they're not at all working with the Marses that are like them, or they could be projecting onto these Marses other things, where the opposite Mars would be around Deneb Algedy, which is kind of like, one does not want to work opposing to a Deneb Algedy Mars. Uh, because that would mean that they are not given a chance to the people that are farthest from the crown, which could really get them undermining themselves when they are exposed and they want to take the position of the underdog that didn't have a choice and didn't have this and didn't have that. Well, they need to make sure that they're not marginalizing. Aries here can assist, but they still have to be not rapey in goal and in method. Um, and one of the vices of kings and the royalty is that they thought they were doing occultistic rape of people and siphoning the energy to build a legacy. That's tradition. It's even traditionally what astrology was used for. In fact, my being an astrologer that goes against that type of practice is historically unprecedented. We had the approximations. We had, well, the earth revolves around the sun of Copernicus, and the supporting paradigm by Galileo, but we did not have people that outright said, hey, use of astrology to ritual abuse is not cool. Of course, people didn't have, let's say, social media, the ability to broadcast, and the ability to do computation with the internet, and so on and so forth. Um, And this is where swiping that under the rug is undermining the core of the essence of creation when it comes to the Magha realm that are always using astrology. And this is where Rahu Deneb Algadi can remind us that Deneb Algadi is not to be the sacrifice star with the Rahu Deneb Algadi. And this is my prediction for Rahu Deneb Algadi, because a lot of people are going to try to materialize it as the sacrifice star and have it their entire endeavors confiscated by things that unlike standard oil, they might not end up having dividends in. Mark my words. Jupiter hour, ascendant approaching Jupiter. Midheaven 28 Pisces, ruled by the Jupiter. Um, and more to do with the Leo Aquarius. Let me see that I have everything here. So we talked about aggressive strategies that are undermining their endeavors when, particularly when Rao is going down Balgeti. Rao Dana Balgeti is not the standard oil strategy compatible, because people are going to question the outcome. Now here's the thing. There is always the question of, does the goal justify the mean? Right now, we are at unprecedented time where we ask ourselves, where we have Neptune in a Mars sign, we expect the goals and the means to be a holistic unit. Kind of like, if I want to abolish rape, I cannot rape people to do so. Um, and so this is what causes, if somebody was using a standard oil strategy, people are going to question the quality of their product. They're going to say, wait a second, are we being disillusioned? Because what was sacrificed on the altar here was the innocence of the infants, the soul. And there is nothing that could justify that sacrifice. And so maybe that thing that looks like a big megalithic thing that at any other time or without that strategy could be seen as, oh my god, that sounds so interesting, I must see what it is, I must try this, I must, kind of like, buying ticket to the first film or the first film in color, and we're gonna have a lot of those. And then basically noting at the strategies that went on, kind of the hype goes, wait a second, am I being invited to a ritual that is going to dematerialize my sense of self and joy of living and is cult-like in its nature? Because the marketing strategy here was really standard oily aggressive. Now, as an astrologer, I don't see something like 1911 happening in the sky, um, because Standard Oil was summoning upon the conjunction of Saturn, of Neptune and Pluto, and towards the sextile, let's say in between the conjunction and the sextile, it went nine. It didn't go 9/11. It dissected into things that still preserve themselves as a conglomerate by offshores. And now, as these offshores are trying to assemble, we are in between the sextile and towards the 2060s, we're going to have the square. So what I don't see here is a 1911 type of dissolution of a conglomerate. What I also don't see here is a reassembly of a conglomerate. What is it? I don't know. Now, I do see that we're not going to be able to move into more ecosystemic methods without abolishing, and I'm looking at Sedna, occultistic rape, child labor, slavery of any kind, including modern slavery, and just expect free energy. Because if that free energy would just be to enslave people, it would fall flat. Originally, I believe that because Nikola Tesla was a bit of a workaholic, he was undermining his own invention, in the sense that if he would go against slavery, his invention would be picked over. Was it Graham Bell? The electricity one. Um, and now we're having another energy juncture where Hormuz is being, there's plenty of free oil running in Hormuz, oil leaking, okay? Um, Pluto Neptune, with Saturn ruling over Pluto in the conjoining Neptune, literally being oil leaking. Um, you see Emir Kusturica picking the gallons of water and trying to. So, France, entrepreneurs. No, France paid Iran ransom to to smuggle oil through Hormuz, um, to the joy and contentment of Trump. Yeah, they kind of like have the residues of the ability to get in national debt spent on bumping something, and then there are the French that are just smuggling some stuff, paying some money, and solving the problem business wise rather than military wise. Um, all the while calling to invest in European weapon companies in a more economic way. So that was one of the moments of the war. Um, Shimon Peres. um, so, new Middle East. um, Now, whatever Francine doing, no, I'm not gonna. There are things that are just so obvious that I'm just going to let them be obvious, and and not state the obvious. Um, More things to say. Yeah, the juncture of going into a more ecosystemic form of energy goes with abolishing slavery. Like, people do expect to have way more leisure time now that AI is everything. Um, they definitely don't expect to have any financial crisis because it's kind of like AI can build houses, AI can bring food from one point to another, AI can tend to bureaucracy, AI can do the accountants, AI can do so many things that why do we even talk about slavery or why do we even talk about depopulation? Oh, wait a second, they build the entire thing to enslave humanity. They build the thing that can replace humanity to enslave humanity. What kind of like? So, from the place of Rahum Magha, it's really about revisiting Deneb Al-Ghedi, consultating with Deneb Al-Ghedi before consolidating into the Magha realm um, in a way that makes things, because if I think about Mula Nakshatra, Magha Nakshatra, Rohini even, those are places in the chart that, namely around the end decan of Aquarius, the end decan of Leo, and the beginning decan of Virgo, the middle decan, the end of the first decan of um, Gemini, the second term of the yeah. Wait, Nate. Um, thank you. I just got a leaf, and I'm so happy. It's a mellow leaf with some butterflower. Anyway, these are places where a lot of opportunities can be, and yet people have to say no to some big opportunities to find and discern the opportunities that are actually a yes. A yes doesn't have rape in it. I'ma say it, I'ma say it, business, pleasure, spirit, matter, food, flights, joy, whatnot. A yes doesn't have a rape in it. So, um, I remember when everybody was thinking, oh, there is business, but this is business, and business is separate, and so yeah, but this is business. Whenever somebody was making a bad move, it's kind of like, yeah, but it's business, and that's how we have um, real estate giant that was burying one of his ex-wives in a parking lot transformed into some sort of baseball because it was um, tax deductible. A woman he still has children with. Now, both of them were business people, um, but this is also now again. Mind you, I don't know how would this woman consider that. Like, I don't know her business view. I don't know how she views the world or how she viewed the world. But it's just denoting that something that is quite stating the obvious. Um, and this is um, at the same time, the reason for the divorce was because they were trying to go very equal marriage, and then both ended up shouting at one another as business partner instead of feeling the romance. And then there was an attempt to balance that. That still raises, if I think about Melania Trump growing into being way more prominent and shining as her own in a way that she may have not completely foreseen or completely shared or have postponed or had navigated between more family-like aspirations. Um, and I predicted when I saw Pluto is in the seventh house of Donald Trump, I saw there's going to be another power equilibrium to balance